Hi, this is the parent information session for fall 2021 SLU-Madrid Study Abroad. This information is as of July 8th, 2021. So this presentation is meant for the guardians of SLU Missouri study abroad students. Some information, specifically health insurance and billing, will not be the same for any non-SLU study abroad students heading to SLU Madrid. The information that we're going to go over today has been shared with all students heading to SLU Madrid in the fall. If your student's home institution is one of the following universities, they don't work with me, they work with Catherine Smith. So any questions about billing or anything can go to Catherine Smith directly.
All right, and we're going to introduce ourselves today. I'm going to go first. My name is Heidi Buffington, and I'm the Director of Admissions here at the St. Louis University's Madrid, Spain campus. I'm currently in the office here in Madrid, and so if you all attend the live Q&A, you can get my perspective because I am physically here in Madrid.
And my name is Kate Brooks. I'm the study abroad counselor for SLU Madrid, but I am based out of our Missouri campus. So I'm not in Madrid, I'm in Missouri right now. So I did, even though I don't live in Spain right now, I did live in a small town down south in Spain for 3 years. And I also taught English in Japan for 1 year. And I've been with SLU since September 2017.
Yeah, Kate has really good perspective on life in Spain. So great. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our campus here in Madrid. Obviously, they're very different. It's a very different campus from our campus in the United States, a little bit smaller and very personal. And, you know, COVID times, you can see some of the pictures there. We are all still wearing masks. I have mine right here. It's still 100% mask usage on our campus, but we are really here to support the students in this kind of unusual time. And we're moving out of that, hopefully, knock on wood, as more and more people are getting vaccinated. But obviously, our health of our student and our community, that's our top priority. We want the students to come here and have a really great experience. Studying abroad is an amazing opportunity, but we also want them to do that with clear heads and knowing what protocols are, and with COVID in mind. All right, so we use Make Madrid Your Campus, or Madrid is your campus, as one of our slogans. And the Madrid campus, while we have 200 some classes here every semester, we really like to use Madrid as kind of the classroom. We call it the playground, the classroom, where students go to kind of take some of their learning off campus. And obviously, as a study abroad student, students need to keep the Madrid in mind, that students aren't just in a sort of bubble campus where the outside rules don't affect them. You know, here in the city of Madrid, like I said, mask usage is still at 100%, and there are some pretty heavy fines if you're not wearing your mask. They just lifted the rule of wearing masks outdoors. So even if you were jogging alone in a park, you would need to wear masks. So one of those things is just to keep restrictions in mind of what you can and can't do. And so we have it here on the left-hand side about wearing masks. So even here on campus, you wear masks indoors. And then, of course, when you're eating and drinking, you can remove your mask, but we put it back on. The vaccination rate is going up here, which is great. But these are some things to think about. In the middle, you can see restaurant seating. And you want to keep the Spanish laws in mind as well. So in the past, we have had some curfews, and students, like, for example, last semester, were not able to leave the what would be considered like a state, like a US state, almost the community of Madrid. But there's still some really good things to do in that area. But we don't know what will happen come fall. And so we're just gonna kind of have to see. Maybe some of these things will come back, hopefully not, knock on wood. All right, so here is our campus. I am located in that top building, Padre Arrupe Hall, number 3, and you can see that the buildings are all very close together. We're a very we're a kind of a suburbs campus, but we're very close to lots of things in downtown Madrid. You can see the metro station is Guzman el Bueno. You don't need a car. People ask us that a lot. All students take buses or metro or walk. It's a very easy city to get around. It's a very safe city. I've lived here for about 17, 18 years maybe. And I've always felt safe. So we're a small campus, residential, but we have lots to offer here. You can see some of the things mentioned on the slides, but dance studio and science labs and of course, faculty and staff, we're here to support you with whatever you need.
I think one of the things that surprises the Missouri students is, for some reason, a lot of Missouri students, they have it in their head, even though I tell them repeatedly, it's not the same at all. When they get to Madrid, they're like, this is really not like the Missouri campus. It's just a lot smaller.
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned some of these already, and of course, I think you'll get this PowerPoint, but things to keep in mind when you come to campus here. We're still doing social distancing. We're still doing mask wearing. Like I said, we're here to support you. We have protocols in place. So if you start to feel unwell, and I'm sure Kate's or I will be mentioning this later, but there's an emergency phone that you can call. We have a whole student life staff that you can be in touch with if you start to feel unwell, or maybe you have a temperature. But we're dedicated to keeping surfaces clean, space, windows open, and we haven't had any COVID cases on campus that have come from on-campus contact. So we're really happy about that. All right.
There are different ways for students to get involved on campus. So even during COVID times, just the same as the Missouri campus, student clubs and organizations were still meeting. Some were done virtual, some were done like a hybrid mix. There's different ways that students, even though they're just visiting students on the Madrid campus, they can still get involved. And we actively encourage them to get involved in student life. There's different volunteer opportunities through campus ministry. There's day trips planned by the Student Life Office. I always recommend for students to take a class that they might not be able to on the Missouri campus, like the flamenco or the Latin rhythm and dance. It's just really good ways to have a fun way to get involved in Spanish culture. There's also a director of sports. His name is Cesar. He works in the Student Life Office. He loves it when study abroad students either want to start a fitness regimen while they're abroad or continue on the one they have. Because as he puts it, exercise is good for the body, mind, and soul, and you should take advantage of it. And Cesar used to be he was a professional basketball player in Spain. So it's good to have that expertise right there. So we'll get into academics. So it is study abroad. So sometimes students are so caught up on where they're going to travel, where they're going to live, that they kind of forget about the academics part, but it is study abroad. So students do need to keep up with their academics. They have strong academics now, or else they wouldn't have been selected to be persistent in the program. So they need to keep up with what they're doing. Classes do begin on September 1st, and in the fall, the classes are going to be held largely in person. Most classes are taught in English. Some classes are taught in Spanish, like the Spanish classes obviously are going to be taught in Spanish. The flamenco class is also taught in Spanish, but that one's not necessary for students to actually speak Spanish. And then some, like a lot of the art classes, are taught in a mixture of Spanish and English. If your student is going for the semester, they do need to be enrolled as a full-time student. So that's between 12 to 18 credit hours. There's no getting around that. That is SLU study abroad policy. And also if you drop below full-time credits, you're violating the rules of your Spanish student visa. The grades that students earn at SLU-Madrid, they just show up on the Missouri transcript like normal. Honestly, there's not even a way on the transcript to see that they were taken in Madrid. So what happens in Madrid doesn't stay in Madrid. So if the student bombs a class in Madrid, it's going to show that they bombed a class at SLU. So they do need to follow the attendance policy. They need to keep up with their coursework. So as we saw from spring 2020, if anything changes, students need to be prepared. So last spring, honestly, SLU-Madrid was one of the first institutions in the country of Spain to move online. So I think nobody wants to do it, but everybody is willing and able to move online if COVID dictates it. So as far as money, there's going to be 3 things billed that will show up on the Missouri bill. for students. So this will be in the My SLU bill pay. So it'll be tuition, which will be the fall 2021 rate, $120 cafeteria plan, and the $350 study abroad fee. So those are the three things that are going to show up on the bill out of Missouri. So tuition is paid normal. So tuition is going to be paid exactly the same as if they were here in Missouri. The $120 cafeteria plan. So students are going to receive 100 euros worth of food preloaded on their SLU-Madrid card, and then they can use that card as a swipe card for the cafeteria. If when those funds are depleted, if they want to tip up, they can. And then the $350 study abroad fee, the bulk of that is going to be the students' GeoBlue health insurance, which I'll cover later on. The students have already paid the 225 euro confirmation fee. If they're choosing to stay with a host family, they've already paid that fee. And then the ones on the bottom, those are all estimated costs. One of the hardest questions that people ask me is, how much money should my student spend? Every student is so different, so I can tell you what you're going to be billed. I say generally in a semester-long program, students usually spend between $3,000 to $5,000 out of pocket, which would include like additional meals or travel. Travel around Europe and Spain, generally it's pretty cheap, but all those things add up. Students have the opportunity to be connected with a peer mentor. So those are students that have studied abroad in the past and they volunteer with our office now. So peer mentors are really good sources to ask like budgeting information. Okay, so there is no housing requirement at SLU-Madrid. Most students do choose to stay with a SLU-Madrid arranged host families, but not all of them. So if your student didn't stay with a host family, the next few slides you can disregard. We have asked students to set realistic expectations about the host family. Most host families, especially because we're still following COVID protocols with the host family. So there's going to be less students staying in each host family. Location, that one is going to be different. Some students have chosen to stay with the host family by campus. Some students might have a 45-minute commute. Some students might stay with the host family that speaks English. Most students will not be staying with a host family that speaks English. We do ask students to be respectful of their host families. So we don't place students with a host family. The students choose the family, and the way that they can choose is based on location. If the family smokes in the home, if the family can accept food allergies, and level of interaction with the family. So there's either half room and board or kitchen privileges. Half room and board means the students are provided with breakfast and dinner, but no lunch, and that's 7 days a week. Generally, students are not allowed to use the kitchen, but that's one of those, every situation is different on how much they can use the kitchen facilities. And the other option is kitchen privileges, which means that students aren't going to be given any meals, but they can use the kitchen to prepare their own meals. But they're going to need to buy their own food as well. So as of right now, we have the same COVID protocols in place for the fall as we did for spring and summer, which means that the only families that are in the database that have agreed to take students are the ones that feel comfortable with doing it. Some of our host families still don't feel comfortable hosting a student because we're still in a pandemic. So those are the ones who have decided that, no, we're not hosting students for the fall. If a student living with the host family develops COVID-19, SLU-Madrid is going to take the necessary steps to help the student. And also in reverse, if the family ends up contracting COVID-19, then the students will work with Student Life to give them a temporary place to stay. If a student does fall ill with COVID during the semester and is staying with the host family is going to have to do make additional food and also cleaning. So there's going to be an additional 15 euros a day charged. So housing is, you will never, ever, ever see the host family housing costs reflected on the my SLU pay from the Missouri campus. It's not going to show up there at all, because all of the money that is charged for the host family housing, all of it goes to the host family. None of it goes to SLU-Madrid. But it is charged by SLU-Madrid because all the host family, their banking information is our system, so it's just easier to pay in euros directly to SLU-Madrid. The online payments can be made in the same housing portal where students chose their host families. So if it's time for the payment due and your student just says, hey, my housing payment's due tomorrow, you need to be sure that you know where you're making this payment. So we do have 3 payment plans. So it's full payment, payment in installments, or in 25% installments, or there's payment in installments if a student is awaiting financial aid. So all the first payments are going to be due at the beginning of August. And then afterwards, depending on the payment plan that you chose, then you're going to get, the students will get a reminder. And if a student doesn't remember what payment plan they chose, they can always go in the system and look. Oh, Heidi, you muted.
There we go. I think you're muted is like the #1 phrase for 2020. I was gonna say good stuff on housing. Oh, and I mentioned a little bit of that before. I brought up safety a little bit earlier, but this is a good slide just to kind of talk about things a little bit in general, and then get into some of the details like pickpocketing and things like that. So Madrid is a capital city, right? It's a major European capital city. And we tell students just to be safe and to keep your wits about you, you know who's around. Obviously here, the culture is much later. We were just talking about this in the office with colleagues who've just been in the States, and things get started a little bit later in the morning and they definitely go later into the afternoon, into the evening. Right now it's, we're recording this in July. It's daylight until 10:30. And so that's, people are out and about until 10:30, 11, 12, 1, I mean, into the morning. And that's all ages. That's just not students. That could be even grandmas meeting up with their friends. So there are people out and about, but you just want to be aware of who's around you. If you're headed home, maybe have a buddy. If you're going to take a taxi, or there's lots of public transportation that students can take. And the big thing, actually, we should mention here is pickpocketing. You see the girl sitting on the steps there. All of those things that are laid there, she needs to keep an eye on those pretty carefully. One thing that we tell students is don't ever hang your purse, for example, on the back of a chair. Don't get up and leave anything of value. If you get up, it might disappear. That just happens in a big city. Kate, do you want to add anything about safety that I might be missing out on?
The pre-departure orientation that we had in April, that's really heavy on health and safety. So you can always ask your student to review that information if you haven't yet. And they're also review health and safety on the SLU-Madrid orientation, which will be on August 31st. A lot of female students end up, they kind of ditch their purse that they have, and a good thing to have is like a crossbody bag. If students use a fanny pack, like don't put anything that important on the outside zipper. We actually give all of our students fanny packs, and what I like about the one from SLU is like there's an inside zipper, so it kind of lays on your belly. But money belts, things like that. It's not that we think thieves are everywhere. Like when I lived in Spain, I didn't have any problems either, but it's not so much that people they don't target foreigners per se, they just target people who aren't paying attention. When I lived in Spain, I did have a friend who got her wallet stolen in a bar that we hung out all the time. I lived in a really small town, and she was Spanish. So just things happen. Students also just need to be careful that their passport doesn't mosey away from them. I think that's the #1 thing I hear from students is they lose their passports.
All right, so how to get here to our campus. So this is a photo of the metro station at Guzman and Bueno. There, like I mentioned before, there's lots of ways to get around the city. Walking is amazing. You'll walk more here than you probably ever have in your life. It's an easy, walkable city, but if you live a little bit further away, the metro is really safe, clean, efficient. There's a bus system as well. So lots of ways to get around, and families are relatively close, but maybe you'll do something else, or maybe where you're living is a little bit further away.
Our current peer mentor coordinator, she lived by Retiro Park, and she said she had a commute on the metro each morning of about 45 minutes, which is pretty standard. our peer mentor coordinator from a couple years ago, he also lived by Retiro Park, and he would just walk. He said it would take about 45 minutes to walk, but he loved the commute because it was interesting, like window shopping or just people watching. He said he kind of go different routes, so he would see different things, and it's a good way to explore the city.
I live by Retiro too. It takes me about 40 minutes, but it seems easy. You just jump on the metro and listen to a podcast or music or something. So that's a metro map. That's hard to see there, but easy to get around. And just going.
And the metro map looks confusing, but it's not. Like, I'm easily overwhelmed by public transportation. Like, I lived in Japan. I know how complicated. I know how complicated that public transportation can be. I never felt overwhelmed in Madrid.
People always comment, "Wow, it's so clean." The metro is so clean. Lots of light. It's very safe. Everyone uses it. Again, everyone uses it. You'll see businessmen, you'll see kids going to school, you'll see older women, everybody. Let's see, the metro actually never stopped during the pandemic, so it's been running. I've been taking the metro for about the past year. I come to work masked. Obviously, masking is definitely enforced, and they're cleaning the metro more than they have before, and it was very clean before. There are sometimes limits to the number of people allowed within the system, so there'll be, the turnstiles will be blocked. You have to wait till a few people leave, but anyways, lots of safety protocols there. The great thing about the public transportation system in Madrid is that it's 20 euros, which is like $25 or something, for a month-long pass for students. And that's for the metro, for buses, normal day buses, for night buses that run all night, and for local trains that will take you out to kind of cool towns outside the city. Really, really affordable.
And then if a student ever gets lost going around Madrid, not a big deal. So you can always ask someone for help. But what I found, because I get lost pretty easily, if I ever got lost in Madrid, I would just find a metro station because they're all over the place. And then you can just say, find on the map where you're at.
Yeah.
So health insurance. So when students are studying abroad, so when SLU Missouri students study abroad at SLU Madrid, they are covered in two types of health insurance. So the first one that I'm going to go over is GeoBlue. So GeoBlue is actually a subsidiary of Blue Cross Blue Shield. It is made specifically for study abroad students. It is a comprehensive international health insurance. But keep in mind, students should never cancel their health insurance from home because this is only valid on the official travel dates of the program. There's also a destination dashboard. So what I like about it is the students could log into GeoBlue or download the app. If they're in Madrid, they need to go see a doctor, or if they're traveling out of country, they really don't feel well, they can put in like where they're at, what kind of doctor they want to see, if they accept GeoBlue, and if they speak English. I had a student a couple of years ago. She needed to go see a dermatologist. So we looked together and we found a dermatologist that accepted GeoBlue in Madrid. Easy as that. If a student has to have medical care and they're paying anything out of pocket, they can also, if they save the receipts, they can submit a claim for GeoBlue to get a refund. So students are also going to be enrolled in a health insurance, a Spanish private health insurance called Sanitas. So they'll get their Sanitas card while they're in Madrid. And so the folks at SLU Madrid, they're very, very familiar with Sanitas because everybody has Sanitas. But here's the lowdown of the coverage for Sanitas. You might notice that medication isn't covered, and we just want to note that prices for medication are significantly lower in Spain and the US. Honestly, a lot of the medication, it's cheaper than the copay that you're paying on medication in the United States. So as I said before, please don't cancel your US health insurance because you're going to need that. Students have been given this information. So if they have any medical conditions, they should talk to their current doctor to see what kind of care they need to continue while abroad. So if they have a prescription, are they able to get a prescription that's going to last them the whole semester? Students can also reach out to Dr. Barras. He is a general practitioner within Sanitas. He also accepts GeoBlue. He isn't, so SLU Madrid does not have a health center on campus, but Dr. Barras is, I call him our doctor. He's on retainer for us. They can always reach out to him to get information on medication or any sort of medical care. I recommend doing it before they go. I also recommend doing it not in August because Europe mostly shuts down in August because that's vacation time. Dr. Barras went to medical school in Texas, and students really seem to love him. I've never met him in person, only over by email, but he seems extremely kind and easy to work with. So the most important thing that I have to say on the slide is do not try to send medication through the mail. It will not clear customs. It will not make it to your student. So don't even try to like sneak medication in that package because it's not going to make it to your student. So we also have a wellness center on the SLU-Madrid campus. So even with students that may not have any issues with depression or anxiety before they go, things can really crop up once you're abroad because the students are not just going on vacation. It's not a short period of time. They're going to be immersed in Spanish culture, and it can be a really overwhelming situation, especially being so far away from home without you don't have your usual support system. So we have a wellness center on campus, and I encourage students, if even if they just feel a little funky from homesickness the first few days, you can contact Laurie, Paloma, or Eduardo. That's what they're there for. If a student knows that they have issues with mental health before they go, try to develop a mental health care plan before you go. So you can have an idea on what you're going to deal with. Students can also work with the Wellness Center to set up appointments with the CUNY's Multilingual Therapy Institute. They take Sanitas and GeoBlue for follow-up care. So maybe if the student's going to Laurie and Laurie recognizes that they need more like continuous weekly or monthly talks, then she can help students set that up. These services are confidential. I know that students go to the health center, but I will never know which students because that is not information that we can have. The counselors work with the students to make the appointments, so it's not anything that a parent can do on their behalf either. I'm open with the students that when I was younger, I really had a lot of issues with depression. A lot of the things that I thought I was okay with when I moved to Spain, a lot of things cropped back up because my life was so different in Spain than it was in the United States. Things that I used to, like tricks that I used to do in the United States to make myself feel better or lift myself up, I didn't have that in Spain. So sometimes in Spain, like I had a really hard time. But reaching out to people that are there to support you, that's the number one thing that you can do. So we do have, as Heidi mentioned earlier, we do have an emergency line. So if a student is having issues, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, those are the regular like working hours, they can always contact Student Life. These are the after hours health and emergency safety numbers and after hour counseling emergency numbers. 112 is a European equivalent of 911. And then there's also 24/7 GeoBlue emergency assistance. And if necessary, if something was to happen, I can open a case in GeoBlue on behalf of the student.
All right. Yeah. And I think if something were to happen, if a student starts to feel feverish or starts to feel unwell, perhaps because of COVID, I mean, the first thing, we have those emergency phone numbers so you can reach out and talk to our student life staff. If someone has symptoms that are COVID-like, they'll probably get a test. And in the meantime, while they're waiting for the results, the students are required to self-isolate. That's pretty standard. But also, they may not be able to travel, and that includes going home, wherever home is, until they are clear of if they have COVID, until they've passed through it or are given the green light to then be able to travel or go back to class. But they can receive support from our wellness center, like Kate was mentioning, and our student life staff And there may be, like Kate mentioned, the extra fee in case the host family needs to prepare special food or cleaning. But, we're here to help. So any, questions you have, or if a student starts to feel a little bit unwell, the first thing to do is to contact someone here on this campus immediately, because the time difference makes it very difficult if they reach out to a parent at home. It may be the middle of the night for us, but they could reach out to us here directly.
Yeah, so these are our official program dates. So if a student is staying with the host family, the earliest they can move in is August 30th. Next day, they need to be on campus for the welcome sessions. Classes start the next day. I'm actually okay with how fast this all moves because it's easier. It helps students get over jet lag a lot easier.
And make friends.
Yeah. In December is the final exam period, and then December 22nd is the host family move out date. That doesn't mean that the students need to come home that day. So if students do want to stay a little bit longer, their visas are valid for 6 months. So they do have a little bit of wiggle room, but they do have to be out of their host family's house that day. I strongly encourage students to buy a round trip ticket. That will just make everyone's life so much easier. And I especially noticed how important that was during spring 2020 when students were trying to get tickets home in an emergency. So I'm a little bit more vigilant on telling students to buy a round trip ticket now than I ever was before. So for banking, we 100% don't recommend that students even try to even think about opening a Spanish bank account. You don't need it. You're not going to be able to earn money in Spain, so you're not going to put anything in it. I'm honestly not even sure if a student could even open a bank account because they're not a resident. So contact your bank, your home bank here to talk about accessing funds abroad. I would also encourage students to ask their bank if they could get an international credit card, because those international transaction fees can really rack up pretty quickly. You also need to tell your bank that the student is leaving the country, because if you don't, the card's going to be flagged as possibly stolen. Another way to be able to cut down on international transactions fees is check with your bank to see if you have a sister bank in Madrid. So every time you access ATM cards do work overseas, and they're going to dispense money in local currency. In Spain, that's euros. So every time you use your ATM card, you will be hit with a fee. So see if there's a bank that might be better for you. One thing that what I did when I lived in Spain, so back when I lived in Spain, people really did not take credit card at all. I used cash almost 100% of the time. I also lived in a really small town, so just cash is still king. Like in Madrid, things are different, but I would still recommend, like in smaller shops or cafes, like they might not take credit card. So what I would do to cut down on transaction fees was take out more money than I I would never just take out like 20 euros. I might take out a couple €100, run home and tuck the money in my hiding place. So that's usually what I recommend to students. So if you're going to be taking out a large amount of money from an ATM, do it with your friends around and then go home. Don't run a lot of money. Visa and MasterCard are widely accepted. Amex, good luck. No one wants to take your Amex because they're going to be hit with fees. And traveler's checks, I don't think anybody takes those anymore.
I don't think, no, not at all.
Even when I lived there in 2000, so the first year that I moved to Spain was 2006, and one of my friends came to visit me and she had traveler's checks. And even in 2006, they're like, no, everybody was like, we don't know what to do with this. So this is one of those slides that it's kind of not necessary anymore during COVID, because I think we all know how to stay in touch with each other. But the big app that everyone in Europe uses is WhatsApp. So students have been advised to download WhatsApp before they go, have that on their phone. A lot of their host family, that's how they're going to communicate, is WhatsApp. That's how Heidi and I communicate every single day. Homestays will have Wi-Fi, and then there's Wi-Fi and computer labs on campus. The Student Life Office also gives students information about telephones before they go. It's really, really not advisable to mail packages to students. I used to say nothing of value, but now I'm just saying, like, don't try to send over a package. Once a package hits custom, it's assessed a customs fee. The students are responsible for that cost. So sometimes the customs fee is more than the package is worth. If you do need to send a package, I would recommend FedEx or DHL.
Or buy local.
Yes.
I guess my pro tip here is I see, I sit by the reception desk and I see the faces of the students when they get even like a simple thing with Halloween candy in it. They have to go 45 minutes outside the city to even process the payment that they might need to do. It's just a painful process. So don't send packages if you can avoid it from the US. If you can do Amazon.es, Amazon or Etsy or any of those, there are you can go onto the local page and have it shipped to the address that you see in the bottom there, and then your student will get it. But it's really sad because they want to get that care package from home and they can't get it, or they have to pay $150 for a bag of candy corn or something like that. So
that's what I've started doing whenever I send like my goddaughter a present. I just go on Etsy, I find a shop that's within Spain, and I mail her a present from there. I used to love mailing, or when I lived there, getting packages from home or sending packages to people. And over the past few years, I don't know what's going on, but they're just really cracking down, and it's not a fun experience anymore. So if you're going to mail a letter, or if you're going to mail something to your student, have it sent to the Madrid campus. Here's the address. When it comes in, one of the receptionists, either Nora or Rowena, will email the students to let them know, and the students can go pick it up at the front desk. So visiting your student. During the spring semester, the slide was completely different because up until June, Spain was not allowing any U.S. citizens in the country for tourism. As of last month, Spain is. So things can change quickly. So I would recommend consulting the U.S. Department of Spain or U.S. Department of State before making travel plans. And if you do visit your student, make sure that when you go, it doesn't interfere with their classes. There isn't like one big break in the fall semester, but Spain has enough holidays that you can make it happen. A lot of students have been asking me lately about different countries in Europe and if it's okay for them to go. I'm not answering these questions because I don't feel comfortable. I'm not a travel agent. I don't feel comfortable answering these questions. And also, things change all the time. That's why my students that were there in the spring semester, they had to look constantly on where they could and couldn't go. They couldn't leave Spain, but just even within Spain. So it's going to be the student's responsibility to monitor information to their destination. So these are two good, easy to read websites on where they can go, what are the restrictions, and then if there's any information about entering the country. So between FERPA and my SLU, so FERPA trumps my SLU share. No, I'm sorry. Spanish data protection laws, that trumps FERPA and my SLU share. SLU-Madrid, all of Europe, they take GDPR, which is data privacy laws, very, very, very seriously. So like if a student was to email the finance office about payment or anything like that, the question is going to be answered directly to the student. So I've tried to tell students that communication is really important and to really hit these points when talking to their parents. So things aren't going to be back to normal as they were prior to spring 2020 in the fall. Like it's just, COVID's still going to be a thing. There's going to still be things that we need to monitor constantly. Like everyone's lives have been COVID since January 2020, honestly. Students are going to have their own unique experience while abroad. There's a lot of students going. I'm working with about 230 students going to Madrid in the fall. So a lot of students are going, but everyone has their own unique experience. Students are going to have good days. They're going to have bad days. Maybe they had the student calls home and they just had a horrible day. They couldn't understand someone in the grocery store. They got lost in the city. They tried to use something in Spanish and they accidentally said something dirty. You know, culture shock, homesickness, like this is bound to happen. And then there's this extra layer of everything with COVID. So if your student's upset, it's possible maybe they're just having one bad day. Maybe yesterday was fantastic and then the next day is going to be fine. If your student does need extra support, those resources are there. But if your student has just one bad day, maybe just let them vent. Maybe there's not anything that you can do. Study abroad is a process. It can be challenging at times, but I also know that it is extremely rewarding. Just talking to the peer mentors, even though the ones that were there in spring 2020, where their semester was cut in half and had to come home because of the pandemic, they all have wonderful things to say about their experience because their lives were changed even in the 2.5 months that they were there.
And so much, you know, Kate mentioned studying abroad. Yeah, it is studying, and your classes will have other students from all over the world. But what study abroad students tell us, they say that they grew, they matured, you know, and I think as parents, you want that for your son or daughter. And so when they have a difficult situation, you know, sometimes they are going to have to figure it out themselves, but the resources are here for them. They often tell us, you know, when we traveled, we had to book our flights, we had to figure this out and figure that out. And or even just figuring out how to find something in the city of Madrid. It's a personal growth opportunity, and hopefully you guys see it that way for your sons and daughters.
Yeah.
We
always recommend that students try to stay in Spain as much as possible.
Yes.
Prior to COVID, it kind of bummed me out when students would tell me that they went to different places every single weekend, because even though the students, they were so focused on travel, when they came back, they were like, I wish I would have practiced Spanish more, and I wish I would have gotten to know Madrid better. Madrid was their home for 4 semesters, but a lot of students, they come back and they don't know it.
Right. And this is a great time for them to actually see the city of Madrid. They might not be able to travel everywhere on their bucket list, their lifelong bucket list of London, Paris, Rome, Geneva, etc. Maybe they'll be able to get to some of those places, but we really encourage them to see the city of Madrid and all the amazing places that Spain has to offer. And Madrid has great cultural attractions too. And some of that stuff is free with a student ID. I guess the ball is in their court to see how much they want to learn about the city of Madrid, but it is a great place to experience, even as a student on a Monday after class. You can do some sightseeing. And
yeah, that's what our new peer mentor coordinator, she said she didn't have class on Wednesday. So what she would do every Wednesday is choose different museums or cultural sites. And then she would that's what she did on Wednesdays. So it was her Madrid Wednesdays.
Cool.
We are a Jesuit institution. So, you know, our big motto is men and women for others. We trust that students are going to make the right decisions when it comes to protecting their own health and those with whom they're in contact. So we're not out of the woods yet. A student will most likely be vaccinated, but we're asking people to still be careful, be vigilant, and follow whatever laws that Spain has in place.
Yeah, so I think we've learned a lot from since January, essentially, of 2020 until now. There are uncertain things. We're not going to be able to tell you exactly the way it will be come fall 2021. Right now, we don't have a quarantine period, so people generally ask that. We don't have a here on campus for all of our entire student body a vaccination policy. I know the St. Louis campus has recommended that students are vaccinated. Kate, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that.
Yeah, SLU sent out an email a couple weeks ago saying that all SLU Missouri students had to be vaccinated. There are a couple ways to be exempt from this, but starting I think in a couple of weeks, that's when the students are going to have to upload their vaccine information in a portal through the health center here in Missouri.
Right. All right, so then we'll just see what happens between now and when you guys get here. Things may change. I think it's a good lesson in dealing with uncertainty and just going with the flow, which actually is a really good lesson for study abroad, because you never know what's going to happen. If you don't speak Spanish fluent and you haven't lived here for 16 years, I've lived here for a long time. And sometimes I go with, you know what, I don't know what's going to happen when I have to do this errand today. and being curious about the city around you. It's a beautiful place to live. And when students leave, they never want to leave. They want to stay here. So anyways, I'm excited to welcome them here to Madrid in just a few months. And here you have our phone numbers and our emails. If you have questions, obviously we're going to have our live session too, and you can join us for that.
So thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.